So if you're going to be doing actuarial science, right? These are some of the things that you must actually expect.
Oi, oi, you know, feeling like Spooder today. DJ Spoo like saying oi, oi. I hope you guys are good and you guys are doing very well. Um, so here's something that I want to do, right? So I want to actually profile all the courses in mathematical sciences for people who want to study them and perhaps for people who are already studying these courses. And today I'm starting with the mighty, the mighty, the mighty actuarial science. You know, so obviously, if you are actually somebody who's very good in mathematics and in high school or from wherever, you would have heard about the course actuarial science. In fact, actuarial science is one of the most famous and popular courses within the mathematical sciences. Um, which is very good, which is very good because then the people who love mathematics and stuff like that, then they know that I can do this course. It's a very respected course. It's a very respected course. When you get into spaces, and you tell people that hey, I'm doing cross science, people, they nod like wow, this guy is doing cross science. So for those of you who don't know, I've said this a lot in the channel that actually I have done actuarial science in first year. So I'm a what do they call it? I'm a dropout of actuarial science. I'm a dropout of actuarial science, but let me tell you this: I will never trade that time when I did actuarial science for anything. I actually believe that I was telling a student this. I actually don't believe in coincidences, or I don't believe in things not working out. I actually think that everything works out, but just not maybe in the way, because just not in the way that we actually would perceive it. Because there's a lot of things that I have learned in actuarial science that I'm still using today, and there is a lot of some of some exposure and some insights that I've gotten from actuarial science that I'm still doing today. And I'm just gonna, mention that, before I forget. But to cut the long story short, came to vets, Ben Mahudu, Rebone Secondary School. That's where I did my matric. I'm from Limpopo, Gene Fest, and I was the guy in high school who was murdering mathematics. So people that I did matric with, they know. In fact, I remember in my matric I got 98% in mathematics. I remember my maths teacher, who was a principal at the time, Mr. Halima, was like, "You owe me 2%. You owe me 2%." I guess maybe his goal was to actually, get 100%. You know, but then I came to vets, you know. Then when I came to vets, enrolled for the actuarial science degree, and then my marks were very good, of course. They just have to let the boy in. So I got into the course. Um, interesting course. Interesting course. Now let me just, you know, okay. Where do I start? So when I was doing my matric, I didn't know what actuarial science is all about. I was just like, I'm just gonna do this course. It has mathematics, so I'm gonna be doing a lot of mathematics. So that was the only thing that I was excited about. Then I get to the course now. Now you're doing courses, you're doing subjects within the course. So I remember in first year we were doing mathematics, statistics, economics, and accounting. Uh, yeah, business accounting. And now I was shocked myself. I was like, Evan, now I have to do accounting, you know, something that I didn't do in school actually. Because in the high school I did the science stream, which was physics, mathematics, chemistry, those kind of things. And now I'm like, okay, let's give it a go. You know, yo, I struggled with accounting and I struggled with economics. But I enjoyed them, but I just struggled with them, you know. And that's why I'm saying that, you know, I still use them even to this day. When they talk about the GDP, when they talk about inflation, when they talk about, the repo rate has increased, interest rates and stuff like that, I understand. Like I really understand because of I was exposed to those kind of terms when I was doing economics and stuff like that, and also accounting and all of those kind of things. When we talk about companies, um, what is that famous equation in accounting? Assets equals to liabilities plus, equity equals to assets plus liabilities. What is an asset and stuff like that. So I actually really enjoyed that, even though it was showing me flames, but I passed. I was passing with like my total score. you know. And then mathematics, I was doing very well at mathematics because obviously it's my forte, you know. And now the beast was statistics. Yo, this is first year, remember? I didn't do second year because then after doing my first year, then the following year that I changed and all of those kind of things. Statistics was a beast, man. Yo, statistics was a beast. Um, so, statistics has two parts, or at least the statistics I was exposed to in first year. You had the data handling side, and then you had the permutations and combinatorics. Um, Permutations and combinations. Is it like that? I'm not sure. But the data handling side was quite easy, because the data handling side is your mean, your variance, things like that, you know. But then the permutations part, yeah, yeah, it was nice. Like the concept is very nice, For those of you who have done permutations, like um, it is nice. The concept is nice, but it was just a different beast. When you enjoy something, but it chows you. That was the case. Um, and also the other thing that I didn't like, man, about doing actuarial science was how other students perceived you on campus.
So the other thing that I didn't like about it, doing actuarial science was how people perceived you when you do actuarial science. So people would be like, "Yo, you're doing actuarial science. Wow, you know, what a difficult course. You're gonna be here for years, not for 4 years, for years. Hey, why are you doing that to yourself and stuff like that?" And that thing, I was telling the other student the other day, I was talking to this other student who was also experiencing the same thing, but this student is doing aeronautical engineering. So there are some courses which are perceived to be difficult. And I think actuarial science is actually one of those courses. So on campus, if you're doing those courses which are perceived to be difficult, then one of the things that you must expect is how people will react, And if you're not careful, that can actually just lower your self-esteem. It can make you to doubt yourself, etc., etc. I remember I even got to a point where I was not telling people what I was doing when I was doing social science. Like someone will ask me, "Which course are you doing?" and I'll just like try to avoid that question and stuff like that because I was tired of hearing people say, "Yo, hey, that course is difficult. You're gonna fail," and all of those type of things. So if you're gonna be doing actuarial science, right? These are some of the things that you must actually expect, and you need to start psyching yourself into the positive mentality around it, because otherwise then you can end up doubting yourself and stuff like that, which I don't understand, man. You see, some of these things that we say, I think sometimes we project our insecurities and our problems on other people. So someone, they're doing a difficult course now, they project that on other people. I think that's what happens in most cases when people start talking about negative about course and stuff like that. Because in my time as a lecturer, and since I lecture mathematics, it means that I also lecture actuarial science students because they do mathematics. Like I've seen people do the course, in record time even, you know, and go on to graduate and do honors and graduate and stuff like that. So I think it's a mindset thing, you know. I think if you tell yourself that you can do the course, you'll do the course. But if you listen to everybody, then unfortunately, then you're just gonna start doubting yourself and all of those type of things. So that's one thing that I hated about the course. But not yeah, that was just coming from me. Maybe I had a low self-esteem. I don't know, but I remember, yeah, that was a problem for me. But I I enjoyed the course, man. And like I said in the beginning of this, that there's still some things that I still use today because of actual science. That's why I don't believe in coincidences, or I don't believe in something just happening for nothing. I think everything in life happens for a reason. So one of the things that actual science really exposed me to was business. Like understanding of business and of finance from a different perspective. Because I remember, you know, one, for those of you who have done actual science adverts, you definitely know Prof. Stephen Jurisic. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right. Um, I I loved his lecturing style, man, and I think I somehow do it in my lecturing. He had this way of actually making you as a student to be, obsessed with current affairs, you know, financial news and stuff like that, because he had a way of intertwining his lectures with what is happening, you know. And I remember one of our first assignment.
And I remember one of our first assignment was that we had to write an essay about we have to go to read a financial story, whether in a financial mail or a newspaper, whatever, and write an essay about it. You know, so he encouraged that. And I remember my Sundays, even to this day, they were for reading. Newspapers, financial mail, um, to really understand, what's going on in the world of finance and all of those type of things, which is something that I still do even to this day. So that's why I was saying that when they say that, you know, the repo rate is increased, I understand what that means. Um, I even started following people, like I would follow companies, I would follow, certain CEOs and stuff like that. I think, for me, that's what actuarial science exposed me to. Other than that, I don't think I'd be that exposed. So that was very interesting, you know, and of course met good people, and very brilliant people, like super smart people, you know. Yo man, yeah, the people are very smart. The people that we were doing social science with, I still remember them, and some of them I still follow them. Those guys are smart, and stuff. So I think then it can be an advantageous thing if you are doing actuarial science, and then maybe let's say in high school, let's say you're in high school, if you want to do actuarial science, I would say that maybe also in your combination of subjects, choose accounting, choose economics as well to be part of the courses that you're doing, you know, that can actually, and also statistics as well. if maybe you come from a school that has that option, because I know in most schools, I'm not aware of the current curriculum in high school, but we were exposed to, sorry about that, we were exposed to statistics through mathematics. So you'd have certain concepts, certain chapters, which were from stats and stuff. But if you come from a school that has statistics as a course, then yeah. And then yeah, you want to, especially for statistics, you want to really get your hands dirty with combinatorics, permutations, and probability. You really want to actually get your hands dirty to that, because actuarial science uses a lot of those type of things. Um, I've had actuarial science professionals here. I've had Mdu, I've had Muripadi, I've had Prof. Randani. The other thing maybe that I can close with is the types of actuaries, because you know, yeah, like the different types of actuaries. Something that I didn't know about. Um, it's like saying that different types of police. I don't know why. Why did I come to police? Maybe because of the Makanga Commission and what is happening in the country around SAPS and all of them. But there are different types of police. You have traffic police, you have police, you have metro police. Hey, is that right? But yeah, so closing on this is the different types of actuaries, and Mudipadi and Du did a very wonderful summary on this. Listen to them.
Actuaries are your people.
Yeah.
We are smart. We are smart enough to understand the dynamics, especially when it comes to risk, and understand every business has risk.
Sure.
Right? And that's where we specialize in. We are good at that. And what makes us or separates us from the rest of the people is the fact that we are able to add statistics into things, right? And not only statistics, but also to account for mortality.
Oof.
And that's what makes us unique. And that's what gives us the upper hand against other careers. The fact that we can use stats and mortality to speak about risk.
I'm laughing because
yeah,
I met this guy who he's also an actuarial, I think, analyst in one of the insurance company. He deals mainly with insurance, right? So we're having this argument, and then he says to me that he's talking to me, but I can sense that he's actually cropping out stats, extracting stats from me. Like he's asking me these questions and everything like that. And it's like to me that, I can somehow estimate your mortality rate. And I was like, Chief, you are here trying to tell me like my death rate. Like, come on, Chief. He was even saying to me that, with the information that I have, I can start to, if I can create, what do they call it? Like an insurance policy, premiums and everything like that. I can, because those information actually goes into how they decide or how they model the prices that people pay on premiums and everything like that. And he was telling me that if I go for insurance, he can actually tell me what I will likely be premium or what kind of premium I'm going to pay based on that. But he was insisting on telling me my mortality rate. Like, who wants to hear about their death?
Nah, nobody does, man. Nobody does. Yeah, so those are called pricing actuaries, right? So I think there's I think various scopes, but the ones that I'm aware of that seem to be dominating is pricing and valuations, right? So you are either but there's also marketing actuaries, and they keep going on and on. But the bigger ones is either you are doing pricing, where you're doing what you are saying, where you are trying to estimate the price of something, the cost of it, right? But in order to get to that cost, you need to model using your mortalities, your inflation, your returns, all of those things. So those are called pricing actuaries. And then there's those that will valuate that money now. I can now you are paying and you are paying, and now they want to see the value or the portfolio of that thing. So they'll do a valuation of the whole company to see if it's sound, or that department that does insurance. There'll be those that are valuing that those prices that keep coming in, or those premiums that keep coming in and keep coming in. So yeah, so there's pricing and there's valuating actually. So I belong on the valuation space.
Let's get into that. Like the actuarial spectrum, like when you graduate with actuarial science, like you spoke about evaluations right now. There is life insurance, you know, stuff like that. Can you take us through the different sort of branches or disciplines? I don't have a word, but you get what I mean, right?
This is my favorite part, because this is the part that I didn't know. So I think this is probably the part that's going to be of the most value to anyone watching this. So what happens is the spectrum itself. So you can be in life insurance, you can be in investments, you can be in short-term insurance, which entails, you know, car, household insurance. You can be in pensions. I think our good friend Mdu was here and he spoke at length about pensions.
Yeah.
You now banking. I hope I'm not, and health. I mean, health in a way falls into both life and short term, but it's too big to not be specified on its own. So those are the big branches, like in medicine, saying, you know, someone is an optometrist, another one is a dentist, and then within those now, like for me, I'm in life insurance, someone is in short term, but within each of them, there's now, you can be in product design. So people that actually design, you know, those calls that you get, hi sir, we're selling a policy that's going to pay you maybe, you know, 1 million, you know, if you die, it's going to get paid to your beneficiaries and you pay this amount. Someone had to design that, right? So we call that the product development space, the people that actually design that. And then after a product is, you know, designed, it obviously gets sold, and then it has to be, you know, people have to be assessed, blah blah blah. But once it's sold, it has to be valued, right?
Yes.
Once it's sold, it has to be valued. So that's where my side of things come. We have to, on a maybe quarterly or yearly basis, value how much that policy is worth once someone has actually bought it. So that's that. So I've actually skipped another discipline. There's pricing. So after it gets designed, it has to be priced. Someone has to actually say, for this level of risk that we're taking, someone will have to maybe pay 500 rands per month. If we want to be able to afford these claims and, you know, cover our expenses and also make the profit that our shareholders want, we need to charge it this much. So there's an entire team of actuaries that decided on that price. So I've spoken about the design, the pricing, and the valuing, right? And then after it gets valued, someone at the Prudential Authority has to, I guess, assess to make sure that this company really does have enough assets to cover their insurance liabilities. So you can also be an actuary that works at the Prudential Authority, is what I'm trying to say. Instead of working at the insurance company, you can work at the Prudential Authority. So the Prudential Authority is a regulator. You can regulate insurance companies. And then I hope I haven't forgotten any other. Oh, so there's others that also manage capital. So their work is to make sure that, okay, if they have assets of 10 and the valuators have valued that the liabilities are worth maybe 7, so how much additional assets do they need to have just as a buffer? Do you get it? Between, just as a buffer. So if the liabilities are 7, the Prudential Authority will still say, maybe still hold two more to just be that much more comfortable that you can, pay off your claims if people claim in numbers today.
I see.
So normally insurers have to hold assets that are equal to their liabilities plus some additional asset that we call the solvency capital. So I think the absolute floor that anyone that wants to own an insurance company in South Africa, I think needs to have about 15 million rands. That's the absolute minimum additional solvency capital that you need to have. So I hope that I've covered. So you can be in those different kinds of disciplines, life, short-term, health, blah, blah. And within them, you can be in product development, in pricing, in valuations, capital management, and obviously there's way more. I think those are just the core that are coming to mind for me right now. But I mean, you can do whatever, honestly.
It's such a very huge value chain, huh?
Yes, it is.
And in banking?
I haven't really done any banking, and I'd be lying. Like, I'm going to ramble if I try to say anything about the actuarial role in banking, because I think it's still new. And personally, I haven't really had any interest in it. So I don't know. Actually, I don't imagine anything. I haven't thought about what it is that actuaries do. Because I mean, a whole thing, growing thing happening in banking. We even have a banking fellowship exam now. It's a growing area, but I haven't tapped into it.
So let's say here's a student who is a graduate in actuarial science, and perhaps they're still thinking of where to actually get into, like from what you've listed. What sort of advice can you give them, especially in terms of growth, to say maybe start here, blah blah blah?
Absolutely. So in whatever discipline you start, whether it's life, short-term investments, blah blah, whatever discipline you start, I would advise any graduate to start with the technical stuff. So I would advise anyone to do the very core technical stuff that no one wants to do, the valuations, because that's where you get the first principle of all those numbers. That's where you actually see how all those numbers are calculated. So for me, that's one reason. And the second reason is honestly that it just makes you that much more marketable. That's just the honest truth. Having technical expertise just makes you that much more marketable because, one, there'll always be a need to value, to get to a value at the end of every financial year. And two, because it's so technical, when people get to a certain level in their careers, if they can leave it, they leave. So there's always opportunities there's always opportunities on the technical side of things. That's just that. So for me, that's what I always advise anyone that comes to me to say, what do you think I should do? I always say, just try to get as much technical experience as you can in the first 2 years of your work. And then after that, you can get a feel of what you want. I mean, I have a friend that moved from life into short-term insurance. It's very, I mean, it's fluid. You can move between them, especially because you can take the exam. So we need to take 2 specialist technical exams, which means you can take one in your actual area of practice and one in another before writing the very final applications exam. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of ability to move, but to reiterate, wherever you start, I would say start with the technical.